Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Voices in the Game. We are so happy you all are with us once again. And I am pleased and honored to introduce our guest for today's episode. She has done it all in the sports industry, a former student athlete and professional athlete, a former collegiate volleyball coach, and she is now the Chief Operating Officer for the United States Collegiate Athletic Association, also known as the USCAA. BJ, how you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on.
Colton, I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get on your show today.
Thank you so much, BJ. And for all of our viewers, if you are not liked or subscribed wherever you listen to Voices in the Game on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe to get you updated on all of our episodes for Voices in the Game. So, BJ the Star, I would love to go back to the beginning. What first drew your interest and desire to pursue a career in the sports industry, and what was the main profession in the industry that you were focusing on when you were first getting into the business?
Yeah, it's funny, and I love to answer this question because I feel like my path to get where I am, it wasn't very direct. I think like a lot of student athletes, as an undergraduate student, I went to school because we thought that's what we were supposed to be doing. We wanted the opportunity to keep playing. Um, and I loved college. I say all the time, I would have been like Van Wilder. I would have stayed there forever if I could have. Um, and after college, like I graduated, I got a job, and it was just that. It was just a job. And my mom was actually the one who kept pushing. She's like, you need to find something that's either in your major, you need to find something that you want to be doing. Like the job you have is just a job. Like this is not your career. You don't love what you're doing. It's a paycheck. Um, and like every irresponsible 22 or 23-year old, I was perfectly happy making a paycheck. But my mom was kind of pushing me, and I had explored the military, and quite honestly, I was really, really close to going the officer route in the military. And I was also looking at graduate school programs. I happened to find Cal U's online program. And when I was looking at Cal U, I actually was going to go continue my communication degree and become a teacher and teach public speaking. I thought that would be awesome. And when I went, they were like, hey, you're going to have to actually finish our undergraduate degree and then complete our graduate program. So it's going to take you 3 years. And I said, guys, respectfully, if I wanted to go to school for 7 years, I would have been a doctor. So thanks, but no thanks. So I was on my way off campus and I saw a flyer for their sports management program. And that was kind of my light bulb moment. I'm like, you're so silly. What's the one thing that you have been doing for your entire life since you were 8 or 9 years old? Was being an athlete. I grew up playing softball in like local rec leagues. I started playing volleyball when I was 12 years old. And I'm like, hey, dummy, like this is it. So I turned around and I walked back in and I said, okay, if I can't do the communication, master's degree, what about sports management? And they said, if you write an essay to enter into the program, like we'll consider your application. And I mean, the rest is history from there. So I did my master's degree online while I was still working full time. And then took me a couple of years, but I was lucky enough to land my first job in athletics at Penn State Beaver. And that's where I got my start as a volleyball coach and an athletic administrator. And I knew going through grad school that I wanted to get into athletic administration. When I was hired at Beaver, it was for the assistant athletic director position. And that's what excited me the most. And when I was there for the interview process, they were like, we noticed that you have some volleyball experience on your resume. And I had done some coaching at the high school and club level, but never anything at college. And they said, would this be something that interests you? And I'm like, well, I've never been a college coach, but if you're looking for a coach and you feel like I've got the skill set to take that on, then yes, absolutely. Let's see where it goes. But like I said, that was kind of a bonus on the side. And I had no idea how much I would fall in love with coaching because it's always been a goal to be an athletic administrator.
So we'll get to that part, BJ, when you were at Pitt Greensburg. But when during all that time when you were at Pitt Greensburg growing up, did you ever have a desire to be a coach?
I think it crosses every athlete's mind. You always say, when I'm done being an athlete, I would love to go and be a coach. And like I said, I had the opportunity to coach some middle school teams. Quite honestly, with the exception of coaching college, because that's where it's really, really fun because you can game plan. And yes, there's some teaching, but it's more the schematics and the logistics behind putting together a winning program, going out and game planning for specific opponents. But middle school is where you really see the athletes develop. You can see them day by day retain a skill and even year over year, because I was lucky enough at one point to have a group of seventh graders that then I stayed with into their eighth grade team. And when we came back that next spring, I'm like, holy cow, they remembered what I taught them. So those things are really fulfilling as a coach, especially when you're able to teach the game to kind of that next generation of player.
Oh, yes, that's all amazing, BJ. And sticking with your time in college, you were a two-sport athlete when you went to Pitt Greensburg. As you mentioned, you played volleyball and softball. So how was that like, BJ, having to manage playing two sports throughout the school year and also being a student as well?
It I say all the time I was pretty lucky as a student. The academic side for most things came naturally to me. Not so much the math or the science, but definitely the English. I think that's probably why I was a communication major. But for the most part, I mean, the academic side, yes, I studied and did all those things like everybody else. Um, I actually found that when I was in season, and a lot of times they have research that shows this, when the athletes are in season, they're doing better because their lives are far more structured. Um, and I found that to be true for me. So I was actually happier when I was in season. I'm a person who likes to be busy. I like to have a full schedule. I like to have a full plate. Um, so, getting up and going to class all day, trying to get in, some time in the gym, getting into practice, getting your homework done, making time for our travel schedules, all of that was actually better for me than when I was in that winter season, kind of in between when volleyball ended and softball conditioning was starting. November and December were always like, I have all this time. What am I supposed to do with myself? I kind of couldn't wait for January to start so that we could get into softball conditioning. And then, in March when the weather breaks and we're actually finally able to get outside, it was good for me. So I loved it. But I like a busy schedule.
And what were some of those biggest lessons, BJ, when you were at Pitt Greensburg and Cal U that really set you up for success in the sports industry?
Um, I think if you ran into any of my former players, and if they see this, they will definitely laugh at what I'm about to say. I learned pretty early on that success is in the details. And if you're constantly focusing on the little things or what you think feel like little things, you never really have to worry about the big stuff because those little pieces are going to take care of the big picture. So not going to tell you I never skipped class, but going to class, making sure you're taking good notes, making sure you're present at practice. Like, don't go to practice and just go through the motions. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I didn't have practices where I walked through the door and I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I'm exhausted. Like, I would rather go hang out with my friends. Um, but at the same time, the majority of days when I was really present and focused, that's when you get the biggest takeaway. And it's true sitting in the office. There are plenty of days where I'm like, it's finally gorgeous outside. I would love to just blow off the day. But if I can take care of, 5, 6, 7, 8 small tasks, same way at practice, if I can, I want to improve my serving. So when we get to the serving portion of practice, I'm really going to hone in and be present and focus on that. So, it's paying attention to the little details, taking care of those little details, and you'll find most times you don't run into a big problem or there isn't a big hurdle to overcome because you've been putting these smaller building blocks in place over time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is all amazing, BJ. And we'll get to your time at Penn State Beaver coming up here. But I first want to talk about your experience playing for the Pittsburgh Passion, a professional women's football team in the Pittsburgh area. So, what was that experience like playing for the Passion, BJ?
I got to tell you, I have never been, and I have been blessed to be around a lot of athletics to this point in my career. I've never been around a more talented group of women in my entire life. When I was playing, and it was, mid 2000s, so shamefully almost 20 years ago now. Um, it was a really unique opportunity because at that point there wasn't even the prevalence of women's flag football the way there is now. Um, so these were a group of women who all came from a different sports background. We had track athletes, basketball athletes, volleyball athletes, softball athletes. So everyone was coming in with an athletic background, but very few, if any, had real football experience. Maybe somebody was lucky enough to be able to play, pee wee football or high school football. And we had some kickers on our team that were kickers on their high school teams as soccer players. But other than, one or two other anomalies, the rest of us were just bringing in an athletic background and having to learn the game of football. And I had always been a football fan growing up. Like I can remember sitting with my parents and my grandparents and, watching Monday Night Football and watching the Steeler games on Sundays. And I always kind of said, like, I could do that. Like, so I think having a love of football really helped. Being an athlete helped. And like I said, I always kind of had that desire. And in the back of my head was always kind of thinking, hey, I could do that. Um, but man, it was just to be around such a diverse group of athletes was incredible. And we all had this kind of common bond of learning the game together. And then getting an opportunity to play alongside veterans who had been there for years and years and years. I still keep in touch with some of those teammates today.
Yeah, what was that experience like, BJ? Learning the fundamentals of actually playing the game for you and your teammates.
It was so much fun. I like to learn. I love the challenge of learning. Um, I thought I knew a lot about football before I started that. And then they hand you a playbook and it's pages and pages and pages. And I was like, man, I thought I was done with school. I didn't think I was going to have to study anymore. Um, but it doesn't feel like studying. It's not like picking up a textbook. And again, I think it's that investment in wanting to learn and wanting to do it. And I played on the defensive line and I did some special teams. Our defensive line coach was awesome. And I think all the coaches across the board had an understanding that a lot of us didn't have a really thorough football background. So they did a great job of taking it back to the basics, working with us on form. I mean, think about it. When you get, young men and now young women with flag football and even tackle football, they're learning the fundamentals of the game at, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. We were having to teach us as adults in our late teens, early 20s, some of the women in their 30s, how to form tackle and to do it safely. Um, and, in addition to learning fundamentals, we're also trying to learn our playbook. We're also trying to, become a cohesive unit. So, it was really unique. And like I said, I think everybody kind of came in there really open-minded and everybody wanted to be there and wanted to learn. And the veteran players were really excited to have new players in the locker room because again, it's such this diverse background of all these different types of athlete. And it was a really, really incredible experience. I can't say enough good things about that organization at all. They're amazing.
And all of your hard work paid off in 2007 when you were on that team that went undefeated and won a national championship. So, what was that feeling like for you and your teammates, BJ, knowing that you won a national championship without losing a game?
It it's one of those things, and I think every athlete, every coach will tell you, you're always just worried about the next game. You're always just trying to go 1-0. We knew we were really good. I can't say enough good things. Lisa Horton was our quarterback. This lady, she could throw a ball a mile. We had a really spectacular running back. We had a nice core of wide receivers. It goes without saying, like we definitely had all the right pieces. Um, and we had our offensive coaches, man, they put together a heck of a play. I mean, I can remember on the first play of the championship game, like they threw a bomb. We scored right out of the gate. So it's really, really fun. I mean, winning is fun, right? But you embrace the challenges along the way. It's and then there's all the off the field stuff, right? Like the traveling and as rookies, everybody was assigned a veteran or two veterans, so it's that camaraderie in the locker room and kind of exchanging your pregame gifts and taking care of one another. The winning is a bonus, but when I look at it now, again, sitting in the seat I sit in and being a part of so many student athletes championship experience, having my own to look back on and say, what were the best pieces of that day and that season for me, and how can we replicate that for our student athletes now, I think is really important. But not many people get an opportunity to play for a national championship, especially at the professional level. Um, part of me says I was in the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people, and that's certainly a huge part of it. Um, but I don't want to downplay my own individual contributions. And I was lucky enough to be a starter that year and play in some select defensive packages. Uh, it was just a really, really incredible, awesome year. And like I said, all the travel and going down there to Nashville and getting to play the championship down there. My mom, my brother, and some friends were able to be there. So it was very cool.
Yeah, that is all amazing, BJ. And then moving forward, going back to your time at Penn State Beaver, what was your main coaching philosophy that you brought to the table in the years when you were coaching volleyball at Beaver?
I think it's shifted over the years. When I went in, I mean, like any coach who's walking into an established program, um, and I got started late. I didn't get hired until the middle of the year. So I started in Beaver in January. So I was kind of behind the eight ball in terms of bringing in some recruits. I did get one recruit my very first year. She was my only freshman athlete. We affectionately called her Fresh for her entire college career. So on her senior night, she was introduced as Fresh. Um, but I think early on in the career, it was how can I take the pieces that I have and make that successful? And then as you start to bring in each new recruiting class and you're kind of building the team and the culture that you want to have, your coaching philosophy is able to change a little bit. Um, I always prided us, like I said, on paying attention to the details and being really good at the small things and taking care of our side of the court. I can remember early on feeling a lot of pressure to game plan for an opponent. And we did those things, especially in the last couple of years of my career. We were really able to do that. But at that point, I had all my own recruiting classes. And so I think as a coach, it's important to have some flexibility in your philosophy and what you want your program to look like, and having an understanding that you need to make a plan around the pieces that you've got. I think so many times we see some teams where a coach is like, this is our philosophy and this is our scheme and this is what we're going to run. And it doesn't work because you don't necessarily have the right pieces. Where I tried to plan around the pieces that we had in place. And like I said, underneath it all, our philosophy was that we were going to take care of the ball on our side of the court, minimize our errors, both offensively and defensively. Um, and we always tried to force our opponents to make the mistakes. There were plenty of years that we didn't have size at the net. Like we would have a short team or a smaller team, maybe one or two players at the net who were really a force from a blocking perspective. So there were a lot of years we really had to rely on our defense and we had to rely on making smart plays offensively and not hitting into the net or not hitting out of bounds and just saying, we're going to keep the ball off the floor. Like we are going to play the most vicious game of keep the balloon off the floor. Um, and that becomes fun. And again, it goes back to wanting to win for the person that you stand next to on the court. Um, and every team is going to have its challenges, and we're women. Every team is going to have their day where some days you're not feeling it. Some days, you get a little bickering and that stuff happens. But, I think at the end of the day, it's finding that core group of women who wants to come together, that wants to win, wants to see each other succeed. And we certainly had plenty of success over the years.
What was the recruiting process like, BJ? And what were some things that you learned with recruiting as the years went on?
Um, Early on, I focused on recruiting local in the Beaver area. So I was going to, Beaver High School has always had an outstanding program. So a lot of it is building relationships with local coaches, showing up, to one or two matches a year, really paying attention to the players that are on their roster. Um, in those first couple of years, I just wanted to get bodies through the door who I knew were talented and who I knew wanted to continue their own development as players. Because, like I said, when we kicked the show off, I like the teaching part of the game. So I was okay. I didn't need the best player. I wanted somebody who wanted to continue to be better, who wanted an opportunity to play at the next level, who wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. And, we were lucky enough to do that Then we kind of got into this prevalence of online recruiting, and that really opened up the doors for us. Um, we had players from Texas, we had players from Florida, we had players from California, we had players from all over the place. So now we've got this mix of local players. We're bringing in all these out of state players, and you know, we're really lucky within the Penn State system as coaches that the easiest thing for us to sell is a Penn State degree. And so for those players that are coming from Texas, they're like, heck yeah, I get a chance to keep playing. I get to do it at a small campus where I actually feel like a person. I'm not a number. I'm not in a lecture hall with 1,000 people in this freshman seminar. Like I'm taking real classes. I'm working toward a real degree. I get to live on campus. I get a Penn State degree, but it's all small size. And those things are really appealing to a lot of people. And so again, I got really, really lucky with some really talented players coming in from all over the country. And it actually helped us recruit more local players because there was kind of a stigma, just like if you've got a community college or a small campus in your backyard, everyone from your high school goes there. You don't want to go there because it feels like the 13th grade. So we battled that a little bit at the beginning of my career. But once we started bringing in these out of state players, the local players are like, oh, it's not just a bunch of people from all these high schools that I've played against forever. Like, and so then it became more appealing. And then recruiting, I don't want to say it got easy because recruiting is never easy. But it got to a point where I could say, I don't want anybody who's going to come here for 2 years. Like within the Penn State system, you could start any of their hundreds of majors and then continue on to University Park or another campus. I was able to say, look, I don't want to have to turn you away, but I'm looking for young women who want to come here and be part of this program for 4 years. And then you're able to do so much more with your planning and player development in terms of stability of your program. So it kind of evolved over the years, which was really, really, really awesome. And I don't want to say, like I said, it never gets easier because instead of trying to get people through the door, now you're having to pick and choose who are the right people, which is a luxury that if you get to a place in your coaching career, it's awesome to have that you can say, I want this type of player with this type of demeanor, with this type of attitude who's going to help build our culture and not be a cancer in the locker room. Um, and so, like I said, to get to a place towards the end of my coaching career where we had those luxuries was really cool. And I think it was because we had so much success with online recruiting and attracting those out of state athletes.
If this isn't anything that you mentioned already, BJ, what was your overall favorite part about coaching?
It's the relationship with the players. Everybody likes to win. That part always feels good. But I still have relationships with a lot of my former players. Earlier in the late spring, one of my former players is now coaching a JO team up in Michigan. She said, "Hey, like I would love to see you at a game. Like, come see me coach." So I was able to get up to Michigan for a weekend and go see her play. I know you know Jenna. Jenna was a former player of mine. I'm lucky enough now that she works in the office with us full time. So we've kind of brought our relationship full circle. I've known Jenna since she was a high school athlete. Um, so it's very cool to have that experience. I've got former players who have continued on into grad school. I've got one who went and continued her playing career overseas in England. She has finished her degree over there. She has stayed in London. She's watching her career now flourish via social media. Um, so it's really cool to just have all these relationships. It's probably the thing I really miss the most is, you're sitting in your office, you're doing your day-to-day administrative stuff, and you've got players come in. And some days I could sit and kind of BS with them, and other days they'd come in and I'd be like, guys, I am swamped. You can sit here, but I have to work. I can't pay attention to you. And I would just have bodies kind of littered all around my office floor. And even if they knew I was busy, they were happy just to be there. To me, that says we were doing something right. Like that was the type of culture that we wanted, where they could come and we could all kind of exist in the same place. And even if I was too busy to kind of shoot the breeze with them or hang out and whatever, the fact that they just wanted to be there and be around was really awesome.
Yeah, that is all amazing, BJ. And what were your roles outside of coaching when you were at Beaver as an assistant athletic director as well?
So, man, it's a pretty long laundry list, but we I I oversaw all of our game day operations. So at the time, Beaver had 7 varsity sports. So in addition to coaching volleyball, a lot of days I was in charge of making sure that our events were fully staffed. So I did all of our work study staffing, all of the like gym setup, making sure that those students were on time for their shift, getting the benches ready, getting the scorers tables ready, getting the net up. At the same time, we had soccer. We were playing soccer off campus. So I'd have to staff another group of those student athletes, make sure that, they had the ice, the water, all the scorers equipment, everything that we needed to go to soccer. We also had a wellness center. So the first floor of the gymnasium was a wellness center with a big fitness area, yoga studio. I had to have some student athletes to staff that. So I think at our peak, we were probably about 30 or 32 student workers that worked for us in the wellness center. So I managed all of them, game day operations. I was in charge of some of our fitness programming for the general student athletes. So we would bring in instructors for, we used to call it boot camp, but it was a group fitness camp. We would do yoga. I had a Tai Chi instructor come in. I hired several different personal trainers that, students could come in and sign up for 30 minutes or an hour and work one-on-one in the fitness center with a student trainer. Um, I also served on a couple different committees. So I was on our student success committee. Um, and that was kind of a pairing between athletics and our academic advising and helping not just the student athletes, but the student population as a whole. We wanted to make sure we had programs in place that were helping them get where they needed to be academically, but that they were also being celebrated for their accomplishments. So, I mean, there was just stuff happening all the time. I was taking care of some of the sports information work. So I did a lot of stuff with the website. I had a couple of student athletes every year that worked for me specifically on our website, doing post game recaps, taking pictures, making sure all of our social media was updated. So it's not like I had to sit and manage all of these things. I had a really awesome team of student workers every single year that worked for us. We affectionately called them the B team. And anybody that catches this, there are some of those people who started out as student athletes that you will still catch at a USCAA national championship from time to time.
My goodness, BJ. With all of that experience, how were you I'm sure that really we'll get to your time in the USCAA in a little bit, but I'm really sure that that helped a lot, being around you and doing broadcast work for the USCAA. I mean, I saw firsthand all the juggling that you have to do during championship time. So I'm sure all that experience at Beaver really helped you, when you transition into your current role now with the USCAA.
Yeah, I was really lucky at Beaver. The athletic director there, Andy Kirshner, is the best mentor I could have ever asked for. I would not be sitting in the seat I am today if it weren't for him. I mean, one, just taking a chance on me. Like that hiring committee saw somebody who didn't have any collegiate experience, who had minimal athletic experience outside of, some work study stuff during my time at Pitt Greensburg. They saw somebody who was motivated, who wanted to get into industry and wanted to work hard. And I I don't think I felt comfortable at Beaver for like 3 or 4 years. And the same I can say about working here. It takes a long time to settle into a new role in athletics. And there are some things that get easier, the day-to-day processes. But I mean, even still now, I learn something every single day. But Andy was really involved in the USCAA. Obviously, Penn State Beaver was a member of the USCAA. So I was really fortunate early on. He always took me to our conference meetings. So I had an opportunity to get to know other administrators within the PSUAC conference. I think that was huge, being one of the only assistant athletic directors who at the time was able to attend those meetings. And just being there and be able to sit in and understand the process of how those things worked was really crucial. He was also really involved with the USCAA. He sat as their board of directors. At one point, he was appointed the president of the board of directors. So not only were we volunteering at national championships, but I was also able to attend the annual convention. So again, it was more of those networking opportunities and getting an opportunity to see not just how our conference championships and meetings were working, but how USCAA meetings and championships were working, and building the relationships with the USCAA staff at that time um, definitely played a big role in me being able to not only interview here and be hired, 5 years ago as our director of championships, but I think that really speaks to not only the power of having a good mentor, and I've been so lucky to have so many over the years, both from other USCAA institutions, from the national office when I first joined, um, but all of that was born out of networking and really taking advantage of opportunities to go out and meet people. It's just become so crucial in my career, both mentorship and networking going hand in hand.
And you had a chance, BJ, to return to Beaver earlier this year to be inducted into their Hall of Honor. What was that experience like for you, BJ, going back and being inducted into the Hall of Honor?
I, it's so special. I never saw it coming. I remember the day that Andy called. He was like, "Hey," he's like, "I have kind of a weird phone call," and I'm thinking like, "Oh man, like what's going on? Like, are we gonna get like something crazy?" And he's like, I just want to let you know, like you're being inducted into the Hall of Honor," and I was speechless. I was like, "Are you seriously? Like that's awesome." And like I said, I was really blown away. And my next question was like, who else is going in that class? And a good friend of mine who I worked with hand in hand on campus on a lot of our social media stuff, Justin Vorbach, who he was there. He was there, one of their admissions folks, and we kind of came up through the ranks together, which was really awesome. Um, we worked really hard forming a bond between athletics and admissions. And I think that's what helped Beaver elevate the department so quickly. Um, and it kind of became a model for some other schools within the conference. So the honor was really, really awesome. And again, I was kind of speechless, never saw it coming. Um, but to get to do that with not only student athletes that I had the pleasure of watching play while I was there, but to get to be inducted with such a good friend who, like I said, we kind of came up together. He's now their director of enrollment. Obviously, now I sit in this seat. So, our careers have kind of paralleled within our respective worlds. So it's such a huge honor. Like I said, I never saw it coming. I feel really fortunate to have been considered for that. And to be there that night and get to go back and see a whole bunch of familiar faces is really awesome.
And for anybody who doesn't know, BJ, what is the USCAA and what is the main mission of the organization?
So we are one of the five collegiate governing bodies in the country. Obviously, everybody's most familiar with the NCAA, the NAIA, NJCAA. Essentially, we do the same thing that they do. The thing that makes us unique is that our membership is all small colleges and universities. So we are looking for institutions who are below a specific full-time enrollment, oftentimes have much smaller operating budgets, and our mission is field for America's small colleges. And we do that by being very selective with our membership. What makes us really unique is that we allow both 2 and 4 year institutions to compete with each other side by side. And again, we're able to do that because we're restricting our membership kind of based on their size, based on their operations budget. And then within that, we operate our own divisional status as well in some of our sports. And again, it's in an attempt to allow some of those programs who do want to offer athletic scholarship the ability to continue to compete against other small schools with scholarships who, if they were competing in the NCAA or the NAIA or the NJCAA, they just don't have that big of a scholarship budget to do that. But alongside other USCAA members, it seems to be a perfect fit. And then we also have, our non-scholarship division, which is the bigger part of our membership. And, like I said, just to be able to create an opportunity where those small schools feel just as important as anybody else. And there isn't this disadvantage of having to go play these big budget programs. The experience is just the same. I think if you took the name off the door of any of those associations, all five of us have the same goal. All five of us are looking to enhance the student athlete experience. It's just we have found a niche that serves our institutions so well, and we're able to focus on just that group of student athletes and provide them, recognition for their efforts in the classroom, recognition for their efforts on the playing field, recognition for their efforts out in their communities and their campus communities, celebrating the accomplishments of our coaches, and then obviously giving them a platform to compete for a national championship.
How long has the USCAA been around, BJ?
So that that's a tricky question too. We've got roots that goes back to 1966. We've reformed under several different names: the National Small College Athletic Association, the National Little College Athletic Association, and it's kind of reformed over years and years. And it'll even depend on who you talk to. Some folks will tell you that there were these two associations that came together and were reformed as one, where they took kind of the best bits of both sides. Others will tell you the story that it was just a renaming of another association. And that's where I think the history books really get interesting. And I'm sure there's truth on both sides. And we've done all that we can over the last couple of years to kind of talk to some of those founding fathers who are still around and get their insight and really try to gain an understanding of where we've truly grown out of. But we've operated under the name the USCAA since 2001. Um, for the first 4 years or so, it was a little bit disorganized, but in 2005, I think that's when the association really started to gain the most traction. A gentleman by the name of Bill Casto was charged with kind of taking this over and turning it into something. Um, he then kind of scooped up a young guy by the name of Matt Sims, which anybody who's a USCAA historian is gonna know. Like he was gonna be somebody big. Bill at the time was working at the apprentice school. Matt was a student worker. He was kind of just working as an intern, and they took about 40 member schools, and over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, doubled it in size. And so Bill and Matt were kind of working hand in hand, and that's kind of where Matt's career grew. He was able to then become this young face of the association. And by the time I was working at Beaver, Bill was still around, and Bill was the guy. But Matt was the guy behind the scenes, and not even really behind the scenes by the time I got around. He was already working, as the CEO. He had taken everything over, under Bill's guidance. And as much as Bill was Matt's mentor when I started here, Matt was my mentor. And Matt taught me a lot about kind of where we are now. So, when we talk about the line of succession planning, and people tell me this all the time, like, it's pretty unique to be in that kind of short line of succession and being here and seeing where the association's going to go. But like I said, it was those early years in the early 2000s when it was Bill and Matt kind of working in its infancy. And there were some other folks definitely working behind the scenes. Dave Gagne at Central Maine Community College was, a big name at the table. Matt Richards from Southern Maine Community College, another big name at the table. And there are others, long, long, long line of these guys who were from member institutions working behind the scenes to really help this association grow. Jim Heath is another guy. He was at the apprentice school as well when those guys were there, and he kind of took over, the website and the stats and kind of getting us to where we are now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's all amazing, BJ. And how did the opportunity come for you to join the USCAA full-time in your first position with the governing body as the Director of Championships and Development?
Yeah, I mean they had just posted the job, and I knew it was posted, but I loved where I was at Beaver. I loved what I was doing. I loved where I was working. I loved who I was working with. Um, and it's again kind of another funny story. Someone's like, "Oh, hey, are you going to apply?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm okay. Like, I love where I'm at." Another person's like, "Hey, are you going to apply?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm okay where I'm at." And somebody else is like, "Oh, hey, I saw that job was open. Did you apply?" And I'm like, "Should I apply? Like, am I missing something?" And so then I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw my name in the hat, just to see what happens. I always thought the opportunities sounded cool, to come in and have an opportunity just to be focused solely on championships. And one of my favorite things at Beaver was that game day experience. being able to create that environment for the student athlete, kind of all the behind the scenes logistics that go into making a successful game day. And I thought national championships are a game day on steroids. So this would be really awesome. And I had an opportunity at that point to volunteer at so many different championships. I had worked the volleyball championship, I had worked the basketball championship, I had worked at the World Series. So I had an understanding of what these events already were. When you work an event, kind of in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, it'd be really cool if they did this, or it'd be really cool if they did that. So I kind of saw it as an opportunity. Like, I've seen these championships, I've seen everything that they can do. I've always had my ideas about how I could make it better. Um, so like I said, I tossed my name in the hat and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. That is all amazing as well, BJ. And what were your main responsibilities when you were the director of championships and development?
So I was tasked with obviously the oversight of, at that time, we only had 15 national championships, but planning from start to finish. So going out and prospecting different destinations, looking at facilities, contracting hotels, working through the bid processes for the sports where that's applicable, and then obviously making sure that we have all the staffing and that each one of those events logistically runs smoothly. The other piece of that was development. So when I wasn't focused on a championship, which wasn't very often, I was also tasked with working on some different external revenue sources. So looking for national sponsors, national partnerships, and any other external sources of funding. I think probably one of the biggest names that I had brought in at that time was 84 Lumber. And they were able to come in as a sponsor of our national all academic team for a year. So, it was working with some different outside groups in different ways that we could, like I said, bring in those external funding sources, which ultimately enhanced our championship events.
And what are your main responsibilities now, BJ, as the COO?
So I mean, it's shifted a little bit. I still am overseeing most of our championship operations. Obviously, now I've got Jenna and Jared working with me, and they're really in the weeds of all of those logistics. I'm kind of making sure that we're staying on task with some of those things. So rather than, prospecting sites and contacting hotels and making sure all the staffing's in place, now I'm kind of a step above that and saying, hey, Jenna, where are we on staffing? Has the emails gone out? What's the surveys look like? Or hey, Jared, where are we on these hotel contracts? Or where are we on these facility contracts? So it's nice that I'm still involved in that because I love that part of it. But because I'm focusing on strategic plan initiatives, working on the budget, um, making sure that we're attracting new membership and working with current membership and working on some of those higher level things, it's a lot more oversight than it is being in the weeds as the director of championships. And then just day-to-day operations, making sure everything's continuing to run smoothly. And, one of the things that I focus on the most here is customer service. Whether it's for prospective members, current members, just making sure that we're doing all that we can as an association to make sure that our athletic directors and coaches have what they need to be successful within our association.
And what is the application like, BJ, if there are any schools out there that have an interest in joining the USCAA?
So our application's online. We've actually made it a little bit more of a lengthy process from the jump, but that's to eliminate some different steps. Essentially, if someone's looking for that membership application and wanted to complete that application, obviously, like I said, we're going to look for institutions who are a certain size, and in most cases have, a smaller operating budget. We want to make sure that those prospective members are going to meet our membership demographic and that they're able to, fit in with the membership kind of demographic, I guess we'll say, that we've already got. Um, we also look for members who want to come in and be kind of long-term stewards. I think in the early 2000s, so much of our focus was on growth that we were okay with, members coming in and only staying a couple of years while they were growing themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we do still see that happens from time to time. We'll have a member who's with us, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. that then makes a jump to another association because they've continued to grow. And that's great for them. And we love to see that. We obviously hate to see them go, but to be able to support their growth is amazing. But now we've kind of shifted our focus to say we want to have members who are also going to serve this long-term vision with us and grow with us as a whole. So they can get in, they can complete that application, go through that process, pay their application fee. Once that's all in place and we've got approval from our board to kind of continue on in that process, someone from our office will then go and conduct a site visit and make sure that what they've said in their application is actually true. And get a chance to meet with their administrators, see their facilities, meet with their coaching staff. Sometimes we get an opportunity to meet with their student athletes. And again, it's just making sure that their long-term goals align with ours as an association.
And if you know on the top of your head, BJ, how many schools are currently in the USCAA and how many states? Because I'm trying to think when with the broadcasting work I do, this thinking about doing the championships, I think I probably called at least schools from about maybe 10 different states.
Oh man, it's more than double that. I want to say we're probably at about 22, 23 different states this year, and we're at about 80 member schools. And that's I think one unique thing about a small association is we always see a little bit of fluctuation year to year in those membership numbers. We've been really, really blessed that coming out of COVID, like so many other institutions, especially on the small side, we struggle a little bit with, keeping doors open, especially coming out of COVID with the already small numbers and small departments. But in the last couple of years, we've rebounded really nicely. We've in the last 2 or 3 years added 15 to 20 schools, obviously with some different turnover in there. But I really like our membership demographic. We've got an excellent group of members, and we've got some incoming members this year that I'm really excited about as well.
And obviously, this is a little bit of a different time knowing that it's the summer, we're not in the championship season. So, what are some of the main things that you do, BJ, during this time right now, knowing we're in the off season?
It's funny. One of the questions that we get the most is, do you guys work in the summer? And the answer is yes, we are very much working in the summer. We actually start in this past spring. So when we were at the World Series, when we were at track and field, when we were at the convention, we're already planning for golf, not even for this fall, but next fall. We've, already started talking about soccer 2 years from now. We've already started to talk about basketball in 27 and 28. So we're always working really, really far ahead. So right now, primarily for me, it's budget. It's finishing last fiscal year's budget, preparing for this upcoming year's budget, and making sure that all of that's kind of outlined. Once those budgets are in place, then we start, really putting some things in motion. But I mean, we spend our summer making sure all of our hotels are contracted for the upcoming championship season, making sure all our facility contracts are locked up, and that's all taken care of. Jenna and Jared are working on making sure all of our committees are full, that they know their responsibilities and their timelines. We're developing our calendars of events. We're working on information packets for those upcoming championships. We're working on rolling over information on the website. So we're not on the road as much, which is nice. And our days look a lot more 9 to 5 than they do around a championships time. But we're definitely busy, and a lot of it's behind the scenes so that when these administrators and coaches are really getting back into their seasons at the beginning of August, which is just a couple weeks away, that they have everything that they need, like I said, to have what they need to do to flourish and excel within the association.
Why is it such a necessity, BJ, to plan 2 to 3 years ahead for the championships?
It, People want to know where they're going. Um, I'm a planner. I think most people in athletics, you have to be a planner. Um, a really simple answer is when you want a premier facility, you've got to book it early. Same thing with hotels, especially for our spring events. We run into some towns, other college towns that have graduations. So track and fields, that's a huge graduation weekend for a lot of places. Same thing with the World Series. We're running into graduation weekends. In the fall, specifically with golf being in state college, sometimes we have to battle around the Penn State football schedule. So it's really important to get those contracts in place. Perfect example, soccer we host in Pittsburgh. every other year we run into the Ravens game. Um, it just happens to fall on that weekend. So I book our hotels 2 years early because I've got to beat the Ravens fans in town.
We had our
So if we've got to plan ahead to make sure that, we've got our facilities secure, our hotels are secure. Um, and then when it comes time for the event, you're not scrambling on all those higher level details. You can really focus on the intricacies of each event. And that's where the events get special because you can focus on things like, do we have a DJ for the banquet? Should we get a photo booth for the banquet? And those are all things specific to the student athlete. So we try to get those higher level tasks done and out of the way so that then in those weeks and months closest to the event, we can say, how can we focus the most on our student athlete and really make it special for them?
Yeah, that's funny, BJ, about the Ravens because when we were at Highmark Stadium in November for the soccer championship, Steelers and Ravens were literally playing right across the
Right,
river from us. And they
right.
won, I think it was our D2 championships, I believe, when that was going on. So yeah, that is so funny. And how does your responsibilities change, BJ, when we do get into the school year? Because obviously it's a lot more busier.
Yeah, it's just a shift in priority. Obviously, in the months leading up to whatever the upcoming championship is, our focus is on, that event and the next event. So, once we hit August, we're really going to shift our focus to golf and make sure that everything's buttoned up for our golf championships. We're also going to start really working on those final details for volleyball, cross country, and soccer. We do catch a little bit of a break in December. December is another really quiet month for us, which is awesome. Um, but then we're right back into it in January, getting ready for basketball, for track and field, for the World Series. Um, so I don't know that it's a shift in priority because I'm with all of those things, I'm still worried about the budget. We've still got to be prospecting new members. We've still got to be doing some of those day-to-day operations and working with committees and making sure that our power role rankings are done, our coaches polls are done, our player of the week is done. So like we have some of those standing routine things that happen on their specific day and in the specific week. But then it's making sure that we're paying extra attention to those championship items. Making sure we've got stuff ready for bid day, making sure all the staffing is in place. And even though the championship changes and the destination changes, some of those processes we've tried to keep very similar so that from a national office perspective, the information changes, the dates change, the sports change, the people change, but the process stays the same. And because we're able to streamline the processes, it really helps keep things clean and succinct for us, which again allows us the free time for when things pop up or we want to do something special or something crazy happens, we've kind of got the time in our schedule to be able to do that. So I don't know that it's really a shift in priority. It's just we kind of shift where our focus is at the time based on what championships are coming up.
And where are all of the championship venues going to be this year, BJ, for the upcoming school year?
So golf, we're going to be in State College. That's a fan favorite. Volleyball is going to return to Penn State Fayette. Same with cross country. They're gracious enough to host both of those in the same weekend for us, which is awesome. Soccer is going to return to Highmark Stadium. Our basketball championships will return to Buffalo. If we can put into existence now that we get the same great weather that we had last year, sunny and 70 in March in Buffalo. If we can do that again, that'd be great. Track and field is going to be the one that's making a move. That's going to leave the New England area and it's actually coming to Pennsylvania. That's going to be moving to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So we're going to be using IUP's facilities to host track and fields, which I think having some upgraded facilities a little bit closer to the national office, we're hoping to really do some unique things with that event. And then, as always, the World Series will return to Du Bois.
I know that this is a very loaded question coming up here. How do you make every championship experience so memorable for every student athlete and coach during all of the championships that the USCAA sponsors? Because I've seen it firsthand, all of the amazing things that you and your team have been able to do, because it really is a special experience.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it comes down to us being able to take care of the higher level details months in advance. so that as we get closer to the event, especially once the bids are announced, like once we know our teams that are going to be at a championship, we've got 7 days to really tailor everything to them. And so it's having one really good customer service, being able to communicate to them where they need to be, when they need to be, what do they need to wear, what are the expectations, and trying to give to them, whether it's an information packet, a coach's supplemental packet, having the websites up to date with brackets and other information, putting together a know before you go page. We want to equip them with as much information as they can, because as a coach, and I've lived that life, and so I think maybe I'm a little bit more sympathetic to it, is what can we do to allow you to focus on preparing your team for a championship? So we try to take as much as we can off of their plate by equipping them with as much information as we can ahead of the event, so that when they're there on site, they know where they're going, they know how to get where they're going, and they can just focus on getting their team in and out of practice, in and out of games, and truly focusing on the championship. So again, it's all going to go back to focus on the details. And if we're able to take all those little small things off of their plate and let them focus on the big things, then that's what we try to do.
And you also do so many things for the student athletes while you're there, with having the banquet, the skills competition, the All-American list, and then the trophy at the end and all of the medals. We say everybody's name. So, with all of that combined, BJ, how is that experience like for you, Jared and Jenna, and your entire championship staff, to really make it feel like this is a national championship that you guys really care about for all the student athletes?
Yeah, I think what helps is that all three of us were student athletes ourselves. So we've all had the opportunity to understand what it's like to compete. We've all competed. Jenna's really lucky. Jenna's competed in a USCAA national championship. So she's able to have, both perspectives, both as a student athlete, and as an administrator now. So we can all kind of look back at our experience and say, what were the things that stood out the most to us? And how can we replicate those things and then make them better? For those student athletes, whether they've been in a championship before or not, that's the highlight of their career in some cases, getting an opportunity to play it in just a championship tournament. Then when we get to the actual national championship contest and we're handing out trophies, like that arguably could be the best day of their lives to that point in their life. So to get to be a small part of that, I think is really unique and really special. But we just focus on what can we do to make them feel like they're in the spotlight that they've earned, and really highlighting all of their accomplishments. And whether it's, saying their name at the banquet and having our photographer there and having backdrops there, having a photo booth there, things that are able to really elevate that experience for them and make them feel special, because it's all about them. At the end of the day, it is all about the experience of the student athlete. It's all about the experience of the coach. And all of those things then trickle down, because if an athlete has a great experience, they're going to tell their friends that they've played with, like, yeah, you should absolutely come to school here, because this is the experience that we get. Coaches are going to tell their other friends, and that's sometimes how we recruit new members. Is, a coach will say, hey, I've had a great experience, and then their coach at another institution talks to their administrators, and then I get an email from an athletic director. It's like, hey, this coach talked to this coach in your association, and what's the deal with membership? So there's so many different benefits, but it's the little things that make the athletes feel super special. It's especially the photographer. That was one of the best things that we've done, is having a dedicated photographer for our events. And yes, he's taking their pictures with the trophies, but then when that game's over, he's essentially letting them do their own photo shoots, and he goes back into the locker room with them and takes a ton of pictures. And I think that is something that the student athletes remember, is like, this photographer came with us, and the USCAA is building this huge photo store where we have access to all of those things. This year, and you saw it with basketball, we did the basketball bracket celebration. That was something brand new, and that was kind of Jared's brainchild, and that blew up. They love that, to take their logo and run across the gym and slap that on the bracket and advance themselves on the bracket. It's so small. It's so small, but it makes such a big impact. so we try to think little things that we can do for an association of our size and, obviously working within our own budgetary limitations, but what can we do to make the events really special? So whether it's social media coverage or doing, small social media interviews, which again, Jared did a great job on with his baseline to baseline series and, some of the coverage at the World Series, like those things are really cool. And I think some other associations do it too, but they've got teams of 10, 20 people. They've got interns and graduate assistants running around everywhere, but we're able to replicate that with a really small staff. And so it's a lot and we work really hard, but we love to get out of the office. Like we acknowledge that we sit here and we do our Monday through Friday, our 9 to 5, sometimes longer than that, um, putting all the planning in place so that even for us, when we get on site, we're not having to worry about the details. We're getting to interact with the student athletes, interact with the coaches, and provide these unique experiences to them because we've already taken care of the logistics.
And for you, BJ, what was that experience like when you were first named the COO, knowing that you were the first woman in the history of the USCAA to be named to the position?
It's it's kind of funny. I don't know that I realized it before it happened. And even now, it's never been a motivator. It's not why I came here. It's not why I do what I do. It's just kind of happenstance. It's certainly unique, but I think it says a lot about athletics as a whole, college athletics as a whole, to see where women have come within the industry, which is really, really awesome. So to be a part of that, to have my name mentioned even briefly in that same sentence in the growth of women's athletics, I think is really cool. And I'm fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time. And hopefully I leave, a good legacy behind when that time comes of advancing the association of helping to advance women's sports and continuing to push, women's athletics into the future.
And how important is it for you, BJ, to really be a positive role model for women who look up to you as a coach, as a former player, or people that have already been into the sports industry and anyone who has an interest in being part of it?
Um, you know, I, I think it's important, just like anyone else, it's important to see someone who looks like you, to see them do something before you, to kind of pave a pathway. And I can remember having to tell my team when I left Beaver because I had to leave mid-season to take this job. And so I had to announce to my team after a game one day that, a week from now I would be leaving to take this job here at the national office. And they were upset that I was leaving, but so many of them came and said, "I'm so proud of you. And I know you're going to do great things. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do." And so to me, while I was also sad to be leaving, it was kind of that validation to know I was doing the right thing. Because at least if it was, that group of 15 to 18 young women, seeing someone take the next step to take a big jump into a big leadership role in an association where that hadn't happened before. So I think that's really important. I want to do a good job regardless. I don't think it matters that I'm a woman. I don't think that it matters that there hasn't been a female that has sat in this role before. I want to do a good job for me. I want to do a good job for our membership. I'm really proud of the work that we do here. I'm really proud of my career path to this point. I want to be able to continue to do that. And it's to some degree, I want to make sure that people are impressed with what we're doing, externally. And obviously that helps grow membership and keep membership and things like that. But again, I think more importantly, it's taking care of the members that we have, making sure that having what they need to be successful day in and day out. Um, and I want to make sure that, for our team here in the national office, that we're continuing to grow, continuing to advance them within their goals and what they want to do, and kind of aligning their goals with the growth of the association as well. So, it's kind of a multifaceted thing for me, but it all comes back to having a sense of pride in what I'm doing and what we're doing as an association, and continuing to make those people who are involved with us at whatever level, whether it's vendors or CVBs or people that we're working with, externally for championships, like I said, our members, making sure that they want to be involved with what we're doing because we're doing a good job at it. We're very proud of what we do. And like I said, I feel so lucky to be sitting where I am and getting to do what I do and being surrounded by such amazing people, and getting to service student athletes. Like I said, if I could have stayed in college forever, I would. And if I can give somebody half the experience that I had as a student athlete, then I will feel like I won, like I've accomplished something. So I think just kind of keeping that in mind day to day, even on a hard day, you're dealing with things that aren't necessarily fun to deal with sometimes, but it's all going to lead back to the student athlete. And so we gotta sometimes do the unfun things to get to the fun things. So like I said, it's really just taking a sense of pride in what we're doing and what I'm doing. And as long as I'm proud of what I'm doing and I'm happy doing what I'm doing and I feel like I'm making an impact, then I'm going to keep doing it.
And how excited are you, BJ, for the future of just college athletics in general and the USCAA?
I think it's a really unique time. College athletics is changing very, very rapidly right now. I think we're seeing so many changes with NIL and everything that's going on, especially at the Power Five level, the Division One level, and seeing everything happening there. And you know, I think it's going to change things at the small college level. Um, we will see whether it's for the better or for the worse. I think it's going to be for the better. I think we're going to see a lot of shifting around and some movement of schools, and I think that could be beneficial for us. Um, but it's going to be unique for sure. I mean, this whole notion now that athletes, especially those high Division 1 athletes, are now able to essentially be paid. Um, Amateur athletics is going to see a shift. I hope for our sake that we maintain a lot of that purity of the amateur athlete. I think that there's something truly special about that. Not to knock those Division 1 kids who are walking away with these huge Gatorade contracts and Powerade contracts and whatever else, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think that's great for them. Um, but like I said, there is something to be said about the purity of true amateur athletics, and I hope that as things continue to shift in collegiate athletics, that we're able to maintain that at our level.
And what is your main advice, BJ, for anybody who has an interest and a desire to join us in the sports industry?
Be persistent. This is, and I'm sure that you've seen it. You've been around at several institutions calling games and doing some different things. Um, when you think about college athletics and the thousands, tens of thousands of colleges across the country, you think, man, that's a huge industry. It's really not. It's funny how often you run into someone who knows someone else, and all of a sudden you've got this little triangle that's all connected. So for as big as it feels, it's actually quite small. This, it's a hard industry to get into, but once you're in, it treats you really well. So if you want to get your foot in the door, stay persistent. Like I said, it took me a long time to get into athletics. I wasn't hired at Beaver till I was 29 years old. So I got a late start into the industry. Certainly hasn't slowed down my opportunity for growth. So it's getting in, being persistent. Sometimes you got to do the unfun jobs to get to the really fun ones. But you know how it is. You run into so many different amazing personalities along the way. And it really is kind of a tight-knit industry that is amazing. So if you want to get in the industry, go get your foot in the door. Be willing to do an unfun thing. Be willing to do the jobs and this goes for any job, be willing to do the job that no one wants to do. And even if you don't want to do it anyway and do it with enthusiasm, because that's the thing that someone's going to notice. Like, oh, the ice coolers need filled. I'll go do it. Like, taking off those little things off of somebody's plate are so huge. And like I said, those things are the things that people in my position notice. Like, that guy's busting his tail, or that young lady is picking up the slack on a job that nobody wants to do. Are the trash cans emptied? Are the water coolers filled? Like, does that bench need a sleeve of cups? Like, little things like that go a long, long way.
And finally, for you, BJ, if you can pinpoint a moment, what is your favorite memory of being a part of the sports industry?
Oh gosh. You want me to pick just one? I mean, it's
You
hard
can
not
pick
to point to a
multiple.
national. It's hard not to point to a national championship. With the passion. Obviously, that one stands out. I think that's a no brainer. Um, Being inducted into the Hall of Honor is another one that I think is a no brainer. I think what's even more cool than being inducted myself is getting to induct people I know into our Hall of Fame. I've gotten the opportunity to induct my former CEO here from the USCAA, Matt Sims. I inducted him just a month ago, which was awesome. The year before that, I inducted Andy Kirshner, who was my boss at Beaver. To see so many former athletes, like JQ Thurman went into the Hall of Fame this year for us. He was one of the first national championship trophies that I awarded as a director of championships. So it's cool to kind of see those things come full circle.
BJ, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, and I am so proud to know you and just being a part of the USCAA. So thank you so much for coming on, BJ.
Of course, thank you.